Have you ever wanted to give up on English, on love, or even on yourself, only to discover that your child's first day of school would become the moment that saved you? In this video, I will share how moving to the United States, struggling with culture shock, marriage, and simple everyday English led me to cry in a quiet parking lot, not from failure, but from pride. This is a real, slow, simple English story to help you listen, read, speak, and believe again. Morning of letting go. At 5:30 in the morning, I was standing in my kitchen holding a small lunchbox, and somehow it felt heavier than all the years I had spent trying to rebuild my life in the United States. The house was quiet. The sky outside was still pale and undecided. This was my child's first day of school in America. And in that soft blue light, I realized this moment was not only about my child. It was about me, my English journey, my marriage, and every silent night I almost gave up. The coffee machine hummed like it was encouraging me to stay calm. I opened the lunchbox and checked everything again. Sandwich. Apple slices. A small cookie. I added a short note written in simple English. I love you. Be brave. I chose easy words on purpose. Clear. Slow. Honest. The kind of English I practice in these videos. The kind of English that builds confidence step by step. If you are learning English right now and sometimes feel tired, you know this feeling. Your brain wants progress. Your heart wants safety. But your tongue feels slow. Many adult learners lose motivation because they connect language mistakes to personal failure. Psychology calls this a threat response. When you feel judged, your brain's amygdala activates. It treats a grammar mistake like physical danger. Your body tightens. Your voice becomes small. That used to be me. When I first moved to the US, even simple conversations felt like mountains. A cashier would ask, paper or plastic? And my mind would freeze. The climate was different. The food was different. The culture valued direct communication. In my home country, people spoke indirectly to show politeness. In America, teachers and parents speak clearly and confidently. At first, I misunderstood that confidence as coldness. Later, I learned it was simply a cultural style. That morning, as I stood in the kitchen, those early memories came back. I remembered crying quietly after parent-teacher orientation years ago because I did not understand everything the teacher said. I smiled politely. I nodded. Then I went home and searched vocabulary words online. Education policy in the United States encourages parental involvement. Parents are expected to email teachers, attend meetings, ask questions. For someone still building English skills, that expectation can feel overwhelming. But something had changed in me. Research in neuroscience shows that storytelling strengthens neural connections more effectively than memorizing isolated words. When you connect vocabulary to emotion, your brain stores it deeper. That is why I stopped studying English like a test subject and started living English like a story. Every night, I described my day in simple sentences. Today I felt nervous. Today I cooked dinner. Today I missed my family. These small stories became my private training ground. And now, on this first school morning, I realized those small stories had built quiet strength. My child walked into the kitchen wearing a bright blue jacket and new shoes that looked slightly too big. "Are you coming with me?" they asked. "Yes," I answered, steady and slow. Years ago, my pronunciation would shake when I felt emotional. That morning, it did not. Confidence is not loud. It is stable. We drove through our neighborhood. Yellow school buses moved like patient giants. American flags stood in front of buildings. The air was cool and dry, very different from the humid mornings of my childhood. Climate change between countries is not just physical. It is emotional. Cold air can make you feel alone. Wide streets can make you feel small. As we stopped at a red light, I noticed my old pattern trying to return. A quiet voice inside whispered, "What if your English is still not good enough? What if you cannot support your child in this system?" That voice sounded very logical. But it was fear wearing a smart costume. Psychologists describe something called a fixed mindset. It is when you believe your abilities are permanent. You think, "I am bad at English," instead of, "I am learning English." That small shift changes your nervous system. One sentence closes the door. The other keeps it open. So I practiced a new sentence in my mind: "My English is growing." Not perfect. Growing. When we arrived at the school, the building looked bigger than I expected. Parents were taking photos. Some children were crying. Some were laughing. Teachers stood near the entrance, smiling warmly. American schools often focus on emotional safety during transitions. They know that first days matter. Studies show that positive first-day experiences can increase long-term academic confidence. My child squeezed my hand tighter. I knelt down so we were eye to eye. "You are ready," I said slowly. "You can do this." Simple English. Clear pronunciation. Calm breathing. In that moment, I understood something powerful. I was not only speaking to my child. I was speaking to the younger version of myself who once sat at a small apartment table, repeating basic English phrases from YouTube. "Hello. My name is, I am learning. Please speak slowly." That woman felt invisible. She did not know she would one day stand confidently in front of an American elementary school. Here is something practical for you. Attach your English practice to real emotions. When you feel proud, say it out loud, "I feel proud." When you feel scared, say, "I feel scared but I will try." Emotional language activates deeper memory systems in the brain. It makes learning personal, not mechanical. The school bell rang. My child looked at me and asked, "Will you be here later?" "Yes," I answered. "I will always be here." Those words were simple, but they carried years of struggle, love, marriage conversations, cultural adjustments, and late-night English practice. Language is more than grammar. It is presence. We walked toward the entrance together. I smiled at the teacher and said, "Good morning." My voice sounded natural. Not perfect. Real. The doors opened. My child stepped inside. For one quiet second, I stayed where I was, breathing in the cool American morning air. I felt something rising in my chest. Not fear. Not shame. Pride. Sometimes the first day of school is not only for children. Sometimes it is for parents who finally believe they belong. From immigrant silence to parent voice. Silence can be very polite. It can also be very painful. When I first came to the United States, I used silence as protection. If I did not speak, I could not make mistakes. If I smiled and nodded, people would think I understood. Silence felt safe. But silence slowly made me smaller. In my home country, I was talkative. I had opinions about everything: food, education, relationships, even politics at the dinner table. I laughed loudly. I told stories. But in America, my English was limited. My vocabulary felt like a child's backpack, small and not strong enough to carry complex thoughts. So I reduced myself. Short sentences. Careful words. Sometimes, no words at all. Psychologists explain this as identity shrinkage. When we move to a new culture and cannot fully express ourselves, we unconsciously adjust our personality to fit our language level. It is not that we become less intelligent. It is that we cannot show our intelligence. That gap hurts. At first, I told myself this was temporary. I just need time, I whispered in simple English. But time alone does not build confidence. Action does. The first time I truly felt the weight of my silence was during a parent meeting at a local preschool. The teacher spoke clearly, but quickly. She explained classroom rules, school safety policies, emotional development strategies. I understood maybe 70%. The other 30% felt like fog. Other parents asked questions. Good questions. Confident questions. I had questions too. But they were trapped inside my head, afraid of wrong grammar. After the meeting, I sat in my car and felt something uncomfortable. It was not anger. It was not sadness. It was disappointment in myself. I did not want my child to see a mother who stayed quiet because of fear. That night, I searched online for how to improve English speaking confidence for parents in the USA. I found research that changed my mindset. Studies in second language acquisition show that speaking, even with mistakes, accelerates fluency much faster than passive listening alone. Your brain needs output. When you struggle to form a sentence, your neural pathways strengthen. Mistakes are not evidence of failure. They are evidence of growth. This idea felt simple, but powerful. So I created a small rule for myself, one brave sentence a day. At school drop-off, I would say at least one full sentence to another parent or teacher. Not just hi. A real sentence. How was your weekend? Or my child enjoyed the art activity. Small, clear, real-life English. At first, my heart beat fast. My pronunciation was not perfect. Sometimes I paused in the middle of a sentence. But something interesting happened. No one laughed. No one judged me. Most people were kind. Some even slowed down their speech when they noticed my accent. Gradually, silence lost its power over me. At home, this change affected my marriage too. My spouse had stronger English skills at the beginning. During doctor appointments or school meetings, they often spoke more. I felt grateful, but also invisible. In intercultural marriages, language balance can influence emotional balance. If one partner always speaks, the other may slowly feel less equal. One evening, I said something honest, I want to speak more. Even if I make mistakes. It was a simple sentence. But it shifted our dynamic. From that point, I volunteered to call the pediatrician. I wrote emails to teachers myself. I practiced before pressing send. I read my sentences out loud to check rhythm and clarity. This is a practical tip for you. Reading your writing aloud improves both speaking fluency and listening awareness. It connects visual and auditory memory systems in your brain. Over time, my voice changed. Not the sound, but the energy behind it. There is another psychological concept called self-efficacy. It means believing that your actions can produce results. Confidence does not come from compliments. It comes from evidence. Each small conversation at school became evidence. Each completed phone call became proof. I was not fluent yet, but I was capable. And capability is powerful. As my child grew older, I noticed something beautiful. They watched me closely. Children learn not only language from parents, but courage. When they saw me trying to speak English with neighbors, they saw effort. When I said, I don't know this word yet, but I will learn, they learned resilience. In the United States, schools encourage children to raise their hands, share opinions, ask questions. At first, I worried, what if my child becomes more confident than me? Then I realized that was the goal. But to support that confidence, I had to model it. One afternoon, after a short conversation with a teacher about reading levels, my child looked at me and said, Mom, your English is good. That sentence stayed in my heart. Not because my English was perfect, but because my child saw my effort. And effort is contagious. If you feel stuck in silence right now, start small. Describe your day in slow, simple English. Record your voice. Listen back without judgment. Send one message. Ask one question. Courage grows through repetition, not inspiration. My journey from immigrant silence to parent voice did not happen in one dramatic moment. It happened in parking lots, in kitchens, in school hallways. It happened in imperfect sentences. And now, as I remember that first day of school, I realize something important. Finding my voice was not only about language. It was about showing my child that growth is louder than fear. Love across cultures. Love sounds romantic in movies. In real life, especially in a new country, love sounds more like, "Can you repeat that?" And I didn't understand what you meant. Before I became a parent standing proudly at an American school entrance, I was simply a person in love, trying to build a cross-cultural marriage in the United States. And let me tell you something honest, loving someone in a second language is both beautiful and exhausting. When we first met, our conversations were slow. Not because we lacked feelings, but because we were translating emotions in real time. I would think in my native language, search for the closest English word, then adjust my sentence so it did not sound too direct or too dramatic. Cultural habits travel with you. In my culture, love is often shown through actions, cooking, sacrifice, quiet support. In American culture, love is frequently expressed through clear verbal affirmation. I appreciate you. I'm proud of you. I need space. At the beginning, I misunderstood that directness. When my partner said, I need time alone, I heard rejection. In my old emotional dictionary, distance meant conflict. But in this new context, it meant self-care. Cultural psychology explains that communication styles vary between collectivist and individualist societies. In collectivist cultures, harmony is protected through indirect language. In individualist cultures like the US, clarity is valued over subtlety. Learning this changed everything. One evening, during our first winter together in America, snow covered the streets. I was not used to that kind of cold. The silence outside felt heavy. Inside the apartment, we had a disagreement about money. Not a dramatic fight. Just tension. I wanted to save more. My partner believed in balancing saving and enjoying life. The real problem was not money. It was language. I did not know how to explain my fear properly in English. I wanted to say, I am afraid of instability. I left everything behind. I need security. But what came out was, we should not spend too much. Short. Defensive. Incomplete. Language limits can shrink emotional depth. Research in bilingual psychology shows that people often feel less emotionally expressive in a second language, especially in the early stages of fluency. Your emotional vocabulary is smaller. Your tone feels less natural. This can create misunderstandings in relationships. That winter night, instead of shutting down, I tried something new. I spoke slowly. I allowed pauses. I said, I am not angry. I am scared. Simple sentence. Clear truth. The room became softer. My partner listened differently when I used emotional vocabulary instead of practical arguments. That was a turning point in our marriage. I realized that improving my English was not only about career or school meetings. It was about intimacy. If you are learning English and in a relationship, especially an intercultural one, here is practical advice. Build emotional vocabulary intentionally. Words like overwhelmed, insecure, grateful, frustrated, hopeful. Practice sentences such as, I feel overwhelmed when, or I need support with. These sentence frames create structure when emotions feel chaotic. Over time, our conversations improved. Not because we stopped disagreeing, but because we understood each other more clearly. In America, many couples attend counseling even without crisis. At first, that idea felt strange to me. In my home country, you only seek help when something is very wrong. But here, preventive communication is common. That difference taught me something powerful. Strong relationships are built intentionally. As my English improved, I noticed another shift. I began to joke more in English. Humor is advanced language. It requires timing, cultural knowledge, and confidence. The first time I made my partner laugh in English, I felt strangely proud. Not because of grammar, but because I was finally showing my real personality. Marriage across cultures is like learning English. At first, everything feels slow. You translate. You misunderstand. You repeat. But repetition builds rhythm. Shared experiences build shared language. When we prepared for our child's first day of school years later, I saw how far we had come. We discussed education policies in the U.S., classroom expectations, reading habits, even extracurricular activities. These were complex conversations. And I was fully present in them. There was a time when I avoided long discussions because I felt tired of searching for words. Now, I initiated them. Love matured as language matured. There is also science behind this growth. Studies show that couples who practice active listening and clear emotional expression report higher relationship satisfaction. Language fluency supports this process, but intention matters more than perfection. You do not need advanced vocabulary to say, "I value you." You just need courage. On the night before our child's first day of school, we sat together after bedtime. The house was quiet. We talked about how fast time moves. I said slowly but confidently, "I am proud of us." Years ago, that sentence would have stayed inside my head. Love across cultures taught me patience. It taught me to ask, "What do you mean?" instead of assuming. It taught me that clarity is kindness. It taught me that improving English can strengthen not only your public life, but your private one. So when I cried in the parking lot on that school morning, I was not only proud of my child. I was proud of a marriage that survived translation. Climate, culture, and shock. The first winter I experienced in the United States felt like the sky had decided to test my commitment. I came from a place where seasons changed gently. In America, especially in the state where we first lived, winter arrived like a loud announcement. The wind was sharp. The trees were empty. The daylight disappeared too early. At 4:30 in the afternoon, it already looked like night. I remember standing by the window thinking, why is it dark so soon? That simple question carried a deeper one. Did I make the right choice moving here? Climate shock is real. Researchers explain that environment affects mood through light exposure, temperature, and social patterns. Shorter daylight hours can reduce serotonin levels, influencing motivation and emotional stability. For someone already adapting to a new language and culture, that physical change can intensify homesickness. I did not expect weather to affect my English learning, but it did. During those cold months, I felt less motivated to go outside. Fewer casual conversations. Fewer opportunities to practice speaking. My world became smaller: apartment, grocery store, phone screen. When your environment shrinks, your language practice often shrinks too. But climate was only the beginning. Cultural shock arrived in quieter ways. In American supermarkets, strangers smiled and said, "How are you?" without waiting for a long answer. The first time someone asked me that, I began explaining my actual day. They were already walking away. Later, I understood it was a greeting, not an invitation for deep conversation. Small misunderstandings like that can make you feel foolish. And when you feel foolish, you speak less. Then there were school policies. In the United States, children are encouraged to express opinions early. Even kindergarten students are asked what they think. In my home country, respect often meant listening more than speaking. I worried. Would my child become too independent? Would they forget our cultural values? I remember reading the school handbook carefully, translating unfamiliar words. Student-centered learning. Open communication. Parental involvement. These phrases sounded positive, but they also felt intimidating. They required participation. They required language. Culture shock often happens in stages. At first, everything feels exciting. Then confusion appears. After confusion, frustration. Psychologists call this the U-curve of adjustment. I lived that curve. The excitement of arrival slowly transformed into doubt. I missed familiar food, familiar humor, familiar silence. One afternoon, during a parent orientation session, the principal spoke about anti-bullying policies and diversity programs. I appreciated the inclusiveness. The United States openly discusses race, gender, identity. In my culture, some topics are less public. I sat there thinking, I need to understand this system deeply to guide my child. That thought created pressure. Pressure without strategy leads to exhaustion. So I needed strategy. I decided to turn culture shock into language practice. Instead of avoiding what felt strange, I described it in simple English. Today I learned about school rules. Today I noticed parents volunteer in classrooms. Today I felt confused but curious. This technique is called reflective narration. Educational research shows that reflecting in language strengthens comprehension and emotional processing at the same time. Slowly, confusion became information. There was also financial adjustment. In America, healthcare systems, insurance policies, and taxes are complex. The first time I read an insurance document, I felt like I was reading a different species of English. Technical vocabulary can discourage even confident learners. But instead of giving up, I broke documents into small sections. 5 sentences at a time. I underlined keywords. I searched definitions. This is a practical method for you. Chunk difficult material. Your brain processes smaller units more efficiently. Cultural differences also appeared in parenting style. American parents often schedule playdates weeks in advance. Calendars are full. Time is structured. In my childhood, we knocked on neighbors' doors spontaneously. That difference felt lonely at first. I missed random visits. I missed unplanned laughter. But adaptation does not mean erasing your identity. It means expanding it. We started blending traditions. At home, we cooked food from my country. We celebrated American holidays too: Thanksgiving, Halloween, the 4th of July. My child learned to say thank you with American clarity and also learned to show respect in the way I was taught. Bilingual. Bicultural. Not divided, but layered. Through this process, I noticed something important about motivation. When learning English felt like survival, I was tense. When it became connection, I was energized. Motivation research shows that intrinsic goals, like belonging, family, purpose, create more sustainable effort than external pressure. The weather eventually warmed. Spring arrived with soft light and longer days. My mood improved. I felt lighter. But I also recognized that resilience had grown during winter. Hard seasons build internal strength if you engage with them instead of hiding. By the time my child prepared for their first day of school, the cultural landscape no longer felt hostile. It felt challenging, but understandable. I could read school emails without panic. I could attend meetings without fear. I could ask, "Could you please clarify that?" without embarrassment. Climate changed. Culture shifted. And I changed too. Looking back, I see that shock was not a sign I did not belong. It was a sign I was stretching beyond comfort. And stretching, even when it feels cold and unfamiliar, is how you grow. When English felt heavy. There was a season when English did not feel like a bridge. It felt like a weight. Not dramatic. Not tragic. Just heavy. I would open my laptop, click on an English listening practice video, and after 5 minutes my mind would drift away. The speaker sounded clear. The subtitles were helpful. But my brain felt tired before I even began. If you are learning English right now, especially as an adult in the United States, you may recognize this invisible exhaustion. Cognitive scientists call it mental load. When you operate in a second language, your working memory works harder. You are translating, predicting grammar, adjusting pronunciation, and monitoring social cues at the same time. It is like running multiple apps on an old phone. Eventually, the battery drains faster. During that period, I questioned myself quietly. Why is this so difficult? Why am I still slow? These questions were not loud, but they were persistent. And when you repeat negative self-talk, your brain starts believing it as fact. One afternoon, after struggling to understand a school email about curriculum changes, I closed my laptop and felt something close to defeat. The message was not complicated. It explained reading levels, homework expectations, and upcoming parent conferences. But the vocabulary felt dense. Academic English has a different rhythm from conversational English. Words like benchmark assessment and literacy framework do not appear in everyday small talk. I remember thinking, maybe I will never feel fully comfortable here. That thought was dangerous. Not because it was dramatic, but because it sounded logical. Psychology explains something called learned helplessness. When people experience repeated difficulty without visible success, they begin to believe effort does not matter. Motivation drops. Action decreases. The problem is not ability. It is perception. I was close to that edge. But here is the turning point. Instead of asking, why am I bad at English? I asked a different question, how can I make English lighter? That small shift changed my strategy. I stopped forcing myself to consume complex material when I was mentally tired. Instead, I returned to simple, slow English stories. Stories about daily life. Stories about families in America. Stories about small challenges and small victories. When language connects to human experience, it becomes easier to process. Research in language acquisition confirms that comprehensible input, material slightly above your current level, produces steady improvement without overwhelming your brain. So I adjusted my practice. 15 minutes of slow listening instead of 1 hour of frustration. Speaking out loud even when I was alone in the kitchen. Describing what I was doing, I am cutting vegetables. I am preparing dinner. It sounded simple. Almost childish. But simplicity builds fluency. I also began recording my voice on my phone. At first, I did not like hearing my accent. It sounded unfamiliar to me. But repeated exposure reduced that discomfort. This is based on a psychological principle called exposure therapy. When you repeatedly face something uncomfortable in small doses, your fear response decreases. Gradually, English stopped feeling like an enemy. There were still difficult days. For example, during a pediatric appointment, The doctor explained vaccination schedules quickly. Medical vocabulary can feel intimidating even for native speakers. Instead of pretending to understand everything, I said, "Could you please repeat that more slowly?" That sentence became one of my most powerful tools. Confidence is not knowing everything. It is knowing how to ask. Another strategy that helped me was linking English practice to emotional purpose. I imagined future conversations with my child about school projects, friendships, dreams. I wanted to participate fully in those discussions. That image gave my effort direction. Motivation research shows that goals connected to identity, like being a supportive parent, create stronger persistence than abstract goals like improve fluency. When English became part of my parenting journey, it gained meaning. There is also something important about rest. When you feel language fatigue, sometimes the best action is a short break, not quitting. Your brain consolidates information during rest and sleep. After intense learning, neural connections strengthen quietly. Productivity culture often tells us to push harder. Neuroscience suggests balance. During that heavy season, my spouse noticed my frustration. One evening they said gently, "You have improved more than you realize." I did not fully believe it at first. Progress feels slow from the inside. But when I compared my present self to the version of me who once avoided phone calls, the difference was clear. Growth hides in daily repetition. The night before my child's first day of school, as I packed the backpack and prepared that small lunchbox, I realized English no longer felt heavy. It felt integrated into my life. Not perfect. Not effortless. But natural. There was a time when I studied English to survive. Then I studied to belong. Now, I practice to connect. If English feels heavy for you right now, reduce the weight. Choose simpler content. Speak shorter sentences. Celebrate small improvements. Replace "I can't" with "I'm learning." Language is not supposed to crush you. It is supposed to carry your story. Learning through simple stories. The real breakthrough in my English journey did not come from a textbook. It came from a story. Not a complicated novel. Not an academic lecture. Just a simple, slow story about a mother, a child, and an ordinary day in America. I remember listening to it while washing dishes. The sentences were clear. The vocabulary was basic. But something inside me relaxed. For the first time, English did not feel like a test. It felt like life. That was the moment I understood a powerful truth: stories lower fear. When you study isolated grammar rules, your brain focuses on accuracy. When you listen to a story, your brain focuses on meaning. Neuroscience shows that narrative activates multiple regions of the brain at once: language processing areas, emotional centers, and memory systems. This creates deeper learning. You are not memorizing. You are experiencing. So I changed my method completely. Instead of asking, "What new vocabulary should I learn today?" I asked, "What story can I live in today?" Every evening, after dinner, I practiced English through storytelling. Sometimes I retold my own day. This morning I drove my child to school. The weather was cold. I felt nervous but hopeful. Other times, I created small fictional scenes about families adjusting to life in the United States. I kept the sentences short. Subject, verb, object. Clear structure. At first, it felt almost too simple. But simple is powerful. Educational research calls this approach extensive input with repetition. When you hear similar sentence patterns again and again in meaningful context, your brain begins to predict structure automatically. Fluency grows from familiarity. I also started reading children's books in English. Many adults feel embarrassed to read books written for kids. I used to feel that way too. But children's books are designed for clarity, emotional depth, and repetition. They are perfect for language learners. While my child practiced early reading skills, I practiced pronunciation and rhythm. Sometimes we read together. Slowly. One sentence at a time. There is something beautiful about learning beside your child. It removes hierarchy. It creates partnership. Instead of pretending to know everything, I modeled learning. I would say, I don't know this word. Let's find out. That sentence became normal in our house. In American education culture, curiosity is encouraged. Teachers often say, there are no bad questions. That mindset influenced me deeply. I stopped hiding confusion. I started asking. One practical technique that helped me was shadowing. I would play a short audio story and repeat the sentences immediately after the speaker. Not perfectly. Not quickly. Just consistently. Shadowing improves pronunciation, listening accuracy, and speaking confidence at the same time. It trains your mouth to move with natural rhythm. Another technique was rewriting stories in my own words. After listening to a simple story about a family picnic, I would summarize it. The family went to the park. They ate sandwiches. The child felt happy. Then I would add my own detail. In my country, we also have picnics, but the food is different. This connected English to my identity. Language grows stronger when it connects to personal memory. Over time, something unexpected happened. I began thinking in English during emotional moments. When my child laughed, I thought, this is a happy day. When I felt overwhelmed, I thought, I need a break. That internal shift meant English was no longer a foreign tool. It was becoming part of my inner voice. There is psychological evidence supporting this transformation. When a second language becomes integrated into self-talk, learners experience increased confidence and reduced anxiety. The language is no longer external performance. It becomes internal dialogue. The night before my child's first day of school, we read a short story about starting something new. The main character felt nervous but brave. After finishing, my child looked at me and said, "That's like me tomorrow." I smiled and answered in slow, warm English, "Yes. And it's like me too." Stories prepared both of us. They taught us vocabulary like nervous, excited, proud. They gave us sentence patterns to express feelings. They made big emotions manageable. If you are struggling with motivation in your English practice, return to stories. Choose content that is slightly above your level but still understandable. Listen more than once. Read out loud. Retell it in your own words. Keep it slow. Keep it real. Do not worry about advanced grammar in the beginning. Fluency grows from repetition of meaningful patterns, not from memorizing complicated rules without context. On the morning of that first school day, as I watched my child walk toward the entrance, I realized that every small story I practiced had led to this moment. I could encourage. I could communicate. I could belong. Simple stories built strong confidence. And sometimes, the shortest sentences carry the deepest power. Preparing my child for school. Preparation for the first day of school did not begin the night before. It began months earlier, in small conversations at the dinner table, in quiet car rides, and in simple English sentences repeated again and again. In the United States, kindergarten readiness is not only about knowing letters or numbers. It is about social skills, emotional expression, and independence. Children are expected to introduce themselves, follow instructions, and communicate basic needs clearly. That expectation felt both inspiring and intimidating to me. I remember sitting at the kitchen table with a printed checklist from the school website. It included phrases like recognize his own name, can express feelings with words, and follows classroom routines. I read each line slowly. Then I asked myself a deeper question: am I ready too? Because in reality, school preparation for immigrant families is a shared journey. While children practice holding pencils, parents practice holding conversations in English. We started with simple role play at home. I pretended to be the teacher. My child pretended to walk into a classroom. I would say, "Good morning. What is your name?" And my child would answer proudly, "My name is." Sometimes they added extra words. Sometimes they laughed. But repetition built comfort. Role play is not only helpful for children. It is powerful for adult language learners too. When you rehearse real-life situations in a safe environment, your brain reduces anxiety during the actual event. Psychologists call this mental simulation. Athletes use it. Public speakers use it. And I used it for school conversations. I practiced sentences I might need on the first day. This is my child's first day. Please let me know if there are any concerns. Thank you for your support. I wrote them in a small notebook. I read them out loud while cooking or folding laundry. The more I repeated them, the more natural they felt. At the same time, I wanted my child to feel emotionally secure. Research in child development shows that children mirror parental emotional states. If I looked anxious, my child would feel anxious. If I appeared calm, they would absorb that calmness. So I worked on my breathing. Slow inhale. Slow exhale. Calm body. Calm voice. There were also practical preparations. We visited the school playground before the official start date. We walked around the building. We looked at the classroom windows. Familiarity reduces fear. The brain feels safer when environments are predictable. I explained in simple English, "This is where you will learn. This is where you will play." One afternoon, we attended a school orientation event. Parents and children gathered in the cafeteria. The principal welcomed everyone. Teachers introduced themselves. I listened carefully, not only to understand information, but to observe communication style. American teachers often speak with warmth and enthusiasm. They encourage questions. I noticed how they interacted with families. After the presentation, a teacher approached us and said, "We're excited to have you." I responded with a clear smile, "We're excited too." Short exchange. Big progress. Inside, I felt proud of that simple conversation. At home, I introduced emotional vocabulary to my child. Words like nervous, excited, curious, brave. I would ask, "How do you feel about school?" Sometimes the answer changed daily. One day it was excitement. The next day it was fear. I validated every response. It's okay to feel nervous. New things can feel big. This emotional practice also strengthened my own language skills. Teaching vocabulary requires understanding it deeply. When I explained brave, I said, "Brave means you feel scared but you try anyway." That definition applied to both of us. There was a night when my child asked, "What if I don't make friends?" That question touched something sensitive in me. I remembered my own early days in America, standing in rooms full of people but feeling alone because of language barriers. I answered slowly, choosing words carefully. Friends take time. Just say hello. Smile. Be kind. Then I added, "And I will always be here after school." Family stability creates courage. In multicultural households, preparing for school also means preparing for identity balance. We talked about our traditions. I explained that at home we speak 2 languages. At school, English will be stronger. Both are valuable. Bilingualism is not confusion. It is expansion. Studies show that bilingual children often develop stronger cognitive flexibility and problem-solving skills. That knowledge comforted me. As the first day approached, we organized supplies together. Backpack, crayons, comfortable shoes. My child practiced putting on and taking off the jacket independently. American schools encourage self-sufficiency early. I encouraged gently, "You can do it." Each small success built confidence. The night before school started, we laid out clothes carefully. I felt a quiet mix of emotions: anticipation, nostalgia, pride. Years ago, I worried I would not be able to guide my child through an American education system. Now, I felt ready. Not perfect. Ready. Preparation was not about eliminating fear. It was about building familiarity, practicing language, and strengthening connection. And as I turned off the lights that night, I realized something meaningful. In preparing my child for school, I had prepared myself to step fully into this life. Sometimes, getting ready is already a victory. The drop-off moment. The parking lot was louder than I expected. Car doors closed. Children laughed. A few cried. Parents adjusted backpacks and fixed jackets one last time. The American flag moved gently above the entrance, and for a second, everything felt cinematic, like a scene from a family movie about growth and new beginnings. But inside my chest, it was not a movie. It was real. This was the drop-off moment. The line between holding on and letting go. My child stepped out of the car and looked at the school building with wide eyes. The backpack seemed slightly too big for their small shoulders. I noticed tiny details, the way they held the strap, the way they scanned the crowd, searching for reassurance. And in that second, I remembered myself years ago, standing in unfamiliar spaces in the United States, scanning rooms for comfort, hoping someone would speak slowly. The brain does something interesting during emotional transitions. Neuroscientists explain that when we experience meaningful change, our memory system becomes highly active. Past and present blend together. That is exactly what happened to me. Watching my child approach the school doors triggered memories of my own first days in America. My first job interview, my first parent-teacher meeting, my first time speaking English on the phone without preparation. Growth echoes. We walked toward the entrance slowly. I could feel my heartbeat, but my steps were steady. Around us, other parents were taking photos. Some were giving long hugs. Some were whispering encouragement. American school culture values independence, but it also recognizes emotional moments. Teachers stood near the doors, smiling warmly, saying, "Good morning. Welcome." When it was our turn, I knelt down to my child's level. Eye contact. Soft voice. Calm breathing. "You are ready," I said again, just like we practiced at home. "Be kind. Listen carefully. And have fun." My pronunciation was clear. Not rushed. Not shaky. There was a time when speaking in public made my voice tremble. But now, even with emotion rising inside me, my English felt natural. That realization surprised me. My child hesitated for one brief second and asked, "You'll come back, right?" Such a simple sentence. Such deep trust. "Yes," I answered gently. "I'll be here after school." In that moment, I understood something powerful about language. Fluency is not about complex vocabulary. It is about being present when words matter most. The teacher approached us with a warm smile. "Hi there. We're so excited to have you today." Her tone was enthusiastic but calm, the way experienced educators speak to nervous children. I responded, "Thank you. It's their first day. We're excited too." Short exchange. Clear communication. Years ago, I would have replayed that sentence in my head 10 times before speaking. Now it flowed naturally. Psychologists talk about performance memory. When you successfully complete a situation that once caused anxiety, your brain stores it as evidence of capability. That drop-off conversation became evidence. I was no longer the silent immigrant parent. I was an engaged, confident mother participating fully in my child's education. My child took a deep breath and stepped toward the teacher. Small hand slipping from mine. That physical release felt symbolic. Letting go is not abandonment. It is trust built over time. As they walked through the school doors, I felt tears forming unexpectedly. Not dramatic tears. Quiet ones. The kind that surprise you because they carry pride more than sadness. I stood there for a few seconds longer than necessary. Other parents were already returning to their cars. Life was moving. But I needed one more breath. Around me, I heard fragments of English conversations. See you at pickup. Text me later. We did it. These simple phrases felt familiar now. I was part of this rhythm. The drop-off moment also reminded me of something about motivation. Many people quit learning English before they reach visible milestones. They stop when progress feels slow. But growth often becomes visible only during real-life tests. That morning was my test. Not a grammar test. A life test. And I passed, not because I spoke perfectly, but because I showed up fully. If you are watching this to improve your listening and speaking skills, here is something practical. Practice emotional sentences. The ones you might need during important moments. I'm proud of you. I'm here. It's okay. These phrases may be short, but they carry power. Repetition builds automatic response, so when real emotion comes, language supports you instead of failing you. I finally turned around and walked back toward the parking lot. Each step felt lighter than I expected. I thought I would feel empty. Instead, I felt expanded. My child had entered a classroom, and I had stepped fully into my voice. Sometimes the most important English sentence you learn is not complicated. Sometimes it is simply, you can do this. And sometimes, you realize you were saying it to yourself all along. Tears in the parking lot. I did not expect to cry in a school parking lot on a normal weekday morning in the United States. But there I was, sitting in the driver's seat, hands still on the steering wheel, eyes slightly blurred, breathing slowly so I would not look dramatic if someone walked past my car. The school doors had already closed. The noise had faded. The moment was over. And that was when it hit me. The tears were not about separation. They were about transformation. When you go through years of small struggles, learning English word by word, adjusting to American culture, building a marriage across differences, you do not always notice your own growth. Progress hides inside routine. It hides inside grocery store conversations and short emails to teachers. It hides inside simple sentences like, good morning, spoken without fear. But in that quiet parking lot, everything became visible at once. Psychologists describe something called emotional release after prolonged stress. When you move through a challenging season and finally reach a milestone, your nervous system relaxes. The tears are not weakness. They are regulation. Your body is saying, you made it through. I leaned back in the seat and allowed myself to feel it fully. Years ago, I would sit in parking lots for different reasons. I would sit there before entering a building, rehearsing sentences in English. Hello, I have an appointment. Can you please repeat that? My heart would beat fast. My palms would sweat. I felt like an outsider trying to decode a system. Now I had just spoken naturally to my child's teacher.
No rehearsal. No panic.
That difference deserved acknowledgement. There is something powerful about recognizing your own evidence of growth. In motivation science, this is called self-reflection reinforcement. When you consciously notice improvement, you strengthen your belief in future success. If you ignore progress, your brain forgets it. So in that car, I did something simple but important. I said out loud in clear English, "I am proud of myself." It felt slightly uncomfortable. Many of us are not trained to praise ourselves. But confidence grows from internal validation, not only external applause. I thought about the nights I almost quit practicing English because I felt too tired. I thought about winter evenings when the cultural distance felt overwhelming. I thought about early arguments in my marriage caused by misunderstandings in language. None of those moments disappeared. They built the foundation for this one. Growth is cumulative. Another realization came quietly. My child did not see the years of doubt. They saw the version of me who showed up consistently. Children build their understanding of resilience from observing patterns, not private fears. That thought gave me peace. In American parenting culture, independence is celebrated. But independence does not grow from emotional absence. It grows from stable support. By improving my English, I was not just improving a skill. I was strengthening the stability my child would feel in this country. There is research showing that parental confidence influences children's academic performance and social adjustment. When parents feel capable in navigating school systems, children sense that security. Language fluency, even if imperfect, contributes to that capability. Sitting in that parking lot, I understood that my English journey was no longer about survival. It was about legacy. The tears slowed. My breathing became steady again. I looked around at the other cars. Some parents were also sitting quietly, checking phones or simply staring ahead. I wondered about their stories. Maybe they were thinking about work deadlines. Maybe they were feeling the same mixture of pride and nostalgia. Transitions connect strangers in invisible ways. Before starting the engine, I reflected on something practical for you, especially if you are on your own English learning path. Celebrate real-life usage. Not just completed lessons. Not just finished videos. Celebrate conversations, emails, questions asked, moments of courage. Write them down if necessary. Your brain needs visible proof. I also realized that emotional milestones are powerful teachers. The memory of that morning will stay with me longer than any grammar rule. And because it is connected to strong emotion, the language. What school taught me about marriage? It is strange how a child's first day of school can teach you something new about your marriage. After I drove away from the school that morning, still emotionally full from the drop-off moment, I did not go straight home. I parked at a small coffee shop nearby and sent a simple text message, "We did it." A few seconds later, my spouse replied, "I'm proud of us." That word, us, stayed with me. Marriage, especially in a new country like the United States, is not only about romance. It is about teamwork under pressure. It is about navigating unfamiliar systems together, immigration paperwork, healthcare forms, school policies, cultural expectations. It is about building stability when both of you sometimes feel unstable. In the early years of our life in America, stress often showed up in small disagreements. Not dramatic arguments. Just tension over decisions. Which neighborhood should we choose? How much should we save? Which traditions should we keep? When you add second language communication to these questions, misunderstandings multiply easily. There were moments when I felt behind because my English was weaker. During phone calls with service providers or meetings with school administrators, my spouse often spoke more confidently. I appreciated the support, but inside I sometimes felt unequal. Sociologists explain that language fluency can influence perceived power within relationships. The partner who communicates more easily with the outside world may appear more capable, even if that is not the intention. Recognizing this dynamic helped us talk about it openly. One evening before our child started school, I said honestly, "Sometimes I feel small when I can't express everything I think." That sentence was not perfect English, but it was honest. And honesty is more important than perfection. My spouse listened carefully and responded, "You are not small. You are learning. And we are building this together." That conversation shifted something important. Instead of comparing our language skills, we began to view them as shared progress. If I struggled with a formal email, we reviewed it together, not as teacher and student, but as partners. If my spouse felt overwhelmed by work stress, I offered emotional support in clear, simple English. School preparation made this partnership more visible. We attended orientation sessions together. We discussed educational philosophies we had never talked about before. In American schools, communication between teachers and parents is frequent. Emails about classroom activities, newsletters, volunteer opportunities, there is constant information flow. Managing that flow required coordination. We created a simple system. If one of us read an important email, we summarized it out loud in the evening. This practice did more than share information. It became daily English listening and speaking practice for both of us. Repetition improved my fluency. Shared responsibility improved our connection. Marriage researchers often highlight shared meaning as a key predictor of long-term relationship satisfaction. Shared meaning develops when couples create rituals, goals, and values together. Preparing our child for school became one of those rituals. Packing lunches, reviewing schedules, talking about hopes for the year. These small acts built unity. The first day of school also revealed something deeper. Letting go of our child at the school entrance required trust, not only in the institution, but in each other. Trust that we had prepared well. Trust that our home environment had built enough emotional security. Trust is strengthened through consistent communication. In earlier years, when my English felt heavy, I sometimes avoided long discussions because I was tired of searching for words. Silence felt easier. But silence creates distance in marriage. As my confidence grew through storytelling practice and daily conversations, I noticed I was more willing to express complex thoughts. I could say, "I'm worried about balancing work and parenting." I could say, "I miss my family back home." These sentences open doors instead of closing them. There is also research suggesting that couples who experience cultural adaptation together often develop higher resilience. Facing external challenges, like immigration adjustment or language learning, can strengthen internal bonds if partners communicate openly. We were not just surviving America. We were learning how to belong in it together. Later that afternoon, when we both picked up our child from school, we stood side by side outside the classroom. Our child ran toward us, excited and full of stories about new friends and crayons and classroom rules. I looked at my spouse and saw pride reflected there too. That moment reminded me that marriage is not measured only in anniversaries or romantic gestures. It is measured in shared milestones. First jobs. First apartments. First school days. Learning English improved my voice in public spaces, but it also deepened my voice at home. And as I listened to my child describe their first day in fast, enthusiastic English, I realized something beautiful. We were no longer translating love. We were living it fluently. Small English, big confidence. Confidence did not arrive in my life with a dramatic announcement. It arrived quietly, hidden inside small English sentences. Not advanced vocabulary. Not perfect grammar. Just small, repeatable phrases that slowly changed how I saw myself in the United States. After my child's first day of school, something shifted in me. I stopped asking, "When will my English be good enough?" and started asking, "What small sentence can I use today?" That question is practical. It moves you forward immediately. Many adult learners believe confidence comes after fluency. Research in behavioral psychology suggests the opposite. Confidence often follows action, not mastery. When you take small, consistent steps, your brain collects evidence of capability. Evidence builds belief. So I built my confidence through small English. For example, at school pickup, instead of standing silently, I would say to another parent, "How was your day?" That sentence is simple. 5 words. But it opens connection. Sometimes the response was short. Sometimes it became a longer conversation. Either way, I practiced listening in real time. At the grocery store, I stopped avoiding small talk. When the cashier said, "Did you find everything okay?" I answered clearly, "Yes, thank you. It was easy today." That extra phrase, "It was easy today," was my addition, my expansion, my growth. These micro-expansions matter. Linguists explain that fluency develops through automaticity. Automaticity means producing language without heavy mental effort. Repeating small sentence patterns in real situations strengthens neural pathways. Eventually, you do not translate in your head. You respond naturally. Another habit that changed everything was narrating my thoughts during daily routines. While driving, I would describe traffic. "The road is busy. The light is red. I need to turn left." It sounds basic, but this technique improves thinking speed in English. You train your brain to form sentences without external prompts. At home, I practiced expressing opinions more clearly. Instead of saying, "It's okay," I would say, "I prefer this option because it's more practical." That sentence structure, opinion plus reason, is common in American communication. Practicing it helped me participate more confidently in discussions about school decisions, budgeting, and future plans. There is also a psychological layer to this. Each time you complete a small linguistic task successfully, dopamine is released in your brain. Dopamine reinforces behavior. That means small wins create motivation for larger ones. Waiting for a big breakthrough often leads to frustration. Collecting small victories builds momentum. One evening, my child asked for help with a simple homework assignment about describing family traditions. Years ago, I might have hesitated, worried about explaining ideas in English. But that night, I spoke naturally. In our family, we cook special meals during holidays. We share stories. We stay connected. Clear. Warm. Confident. After finishing, my child said, "You explain things really well." That sentence felt like a quiet award. It confirmed something important. Small English is enough to build meaningful communication. If you are practicing listening, reading, and speaking right now, here is a practical structure you can use daily. First, listen to a short, slow English story. Focus on understanding the message, not every word. Second, read the same story out loud. Pay attention to rhythm and pauses. Third, speak about your own life using similar sentence patterns. If the story says, "She felt nervous on her first day," you can say, "I felt nervous at my first job." This 3-step cycle, listen, read, speak, activates multiple learning pathways. It mirrors natural language acquisition processes. And most importantly, it keeps English connected to your real experience. Over time, I noticed that my internal voice changed too. When challenges appeared, instead of thinking in fear, I would say in English, "I can handle this." That internal sentence became powerful. Language shapes thought. When your second language becomes part of your self-talk, your identity expands. The morning after the first day of school, I walked my child to the entrance again. This time, there were no tears. Only calm. I greeted the teacher confidently. I chatted briefly with another parent about the weather. The sky was clear. The air was warm. Nothing dramatic happened. And that was the beauty of it. Ordinary moments felt comfortable in English. Small English created big confidence. It did not happen overnight. It happened in kitchens, parking lots, grocery lines, and school hallways. It happened through repetition, patience, and emotional connection. If you feel stuck, do not wait for perfect fluency. Choose one small sentence today. Use it in real life. Then choose another tomorrow. Confidence is not built in silence. It is built in small, brave words spoken consistently. Pride, promise, and new beginnings. A few weeks after that first day of school, something unexpected happened. My child ran out of the classroom one afternoon holding a small piece of paper. It was a drawing of our family. 3 figures standing in front of a school building. Above our heads, written in careful, slightly uneven English letters, were the words, "My family helps me be brave." I stared at that sentence longer than necessary. Not because the grammar was perfect. Not because the handwriting was neat. But because of the word brave. Brave was the word we practiced at home. Brave was the word I used on the first morning of school. Brave was the word I whispered to myself during difficult winters, confusing school meetings, and heavy English days. And now it belonged to my child too. Standing there in an American elementary school hallway, surrounded by colorful posters and the sound of children's laughter, I felt something settle inside me. Not excitement. Not relief. Something deeper. Belonging. Belonging is a powerful psychological need. Researchers in social psychology explain that humans are wired to seek connection and acceptance within groups. When we feel like outsiders, because of language, accent, culture, our stress levels increase. But when we experience inclusion, even in small ways, our nervous system relaxes. For a long time, I believed belonging would arrive only when my English became perfect. I thought fluency would unlock the door. But that hallway moment taught me something different. Belonging grows through participation, not perfection. I had participated. I had shown up to meetings. I had practiced small conversations. I had prepared my child emotionally and linguistically. I had worked on my marriage, my mindset, my confidence. The result was not a certificate. It was that drawing. That night, after dinner, we talked about the school day as usual. My child described new words learned, new games played, new friends made. I listened carefully, sometimes asking, "What happened next?" Sometimes saying, "That sounds exciting." Listening is part of language growth too. When you listen actively, you strengthen comprehension and emotional connection at the same time. Later, after bedtime, I sat quietly in the living room and reflected on the journey. From immigrant silence to confident parent. From heavy English to living English. From fear of mistakes to acceptance of growth. If you are still at the beginning of your path, feeling slow, doubting yourself, I want you to understand something important. Progress is not always visible daily, but it accumulates. Like drops of water filling a glass. One conversation. One story. One brave sentence at a time. There is strong evidence in educational research that consistent, moderate practice leads to long-term retention more effectively than intense, irregular effort. That means your 15 minutes of daily listening practice matter. Your repeated reading of simple stories matters. Your willingness to speak, even imperfectly, matters. And beyond science, there is something more human. Language is connection. Because I stayed committed to improving my English, I can now help with homework without fear. I can communicate clearly with teachers. I can express love, boundaries, hopes, and gratitude in this country. I can build a stable bridge between my cultural past and my child's American future. The happy ending of this story is not dramatic. There was no award ceremony. No public recognition. The happy ending is quieter. It is a child who walks into school confidently. It is a marriage strengthened by honest communication. It is a parent who no longer feels invisible in conversations. And it is the understanding that growth often looks ordinary from the outside. On the last page of my reflection journal that week, I wrote a simple sentence in English: I did not give up. That sentence represents years of effort. If you take anything from this real English story practice, let it be this: you do not need perfect grammar to build a meaningful life in the United States. You need courage to participate, patience to repeat, and compassion for yourself during slow seasons. My child's first day of school was not only their beginning. It was proof of mine. Every time I hear the school bell now, I remember that morning in the parking lot, the tears, the pride, the quiet promise to keep growing. And I smile. Because the journey that once felt impossible has become our everyday life. That is the power of small English, steady love, and consistent effort. That is how I cried with pride. That is how we began again. Before you leave this video, I want you to pause for a moment and ask yourself something simple but powerful. What would change in your life if you didn't quit this time? If a quiet immigrant parent can stand in an American school parking lot and cry with pride, not because life was easy, but because they refused to give up on learning English, then your story is still being written too. This channel is not just about learning English slowly and clearly. It is about building confidence through real-life English stories, about improving your listening, reading, and speaking skills while healing doubt, rebuilding motivation, and growing stronger inside. Every story you hear here is designed to help you think in English, feel in English, and live in English, naturally. If this story touched you, don't let it end here. Subscribe to the channel for more real English story practice, more slow and clear storytelling for English listening practice 2026, and more emotional journeys that help you speak with confidence in real American life. Like this video if you believe small progress matters. Comment below, I will not give up. Share it with someone who feels tired of learning English but still dreams of belonging. Your fluency is not just about vocabulary. It's about courage. And the next story might be yours.